It's time to huddle up. I'm Garrett Seawright. Thanks for making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. We appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. Helps us get in front of more college football fans, and that's always a good thing. If you're listening on a podcast, drop a 5-star review. We'll read them on the show here as they come in. Week 1 is upon us. Everybody's in action now, not just the Week 0 elites. And it's time for a little predictions. I don't think anything that happened last week affected or affects my predictions for the college football season. And I'm going to reference these at some point throughout the college football season, but by no means. Half of these are things that I'd like to see happen as much as I think they are likely to happen. And I think you can just go down the list of, I could look up who was the favorite in each conference preseason poll and pick that team. And I could tell you at the end of the season either how right I was or anything like that. But what fun is that? What fun is picking chalk? So we got a couple of off the board suggestions and a couple of things that are going to be wacky and zany that I don't think that the average person thinks is going to happen, but also because those type of things happen. So here we go. Conference champs. We'll go group of 5 first because Power 5, baby, is affecting the playoff. So group of 5 conference champs. American. Taking UTSA. UTSA got out to a really good start last year. I think Jeff Traylor is going to be a hot coaching commodity at the end of this season. But give me the Roadrunners to win the American. Conference USA, I chose Liberty. We talked about Liberty yesterday and teams that could be knocking on the door of the NY6 for group of 5. And I think strictly it's because the schedule is not very good. They have one really difficult game against Western Kentucky, who's the favorite to win Conference USA. So give me the Flames to win Conference USA. In the Mountain West, I picked Boise State. I think it comes down to Boise State and Air Force in the final week of the season on Black Friday in a nationally televised game. It will be a widely watched one because the Service Academy, it's on national TV, and it will have a implication on who makes the NY6 Bowl, in my opinion, for the group of 5. Broncos should be pretty good, and they've got a tough opening 2 weeks against Washington and UCF. If they can, and that doesn't have anything to do with the conference championship race, obviously, but if they can get 2-0 out of there or 1-1 out of there, they're likely 11-1 or 12-0. So give me the Broncos. And then finally, in the Sun Belt Conference, I picked Troy. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday as well, that the Sun Belt is interesting to me because it's the best group of 5 conference this year. So does that mean that does that mean Troy is a cut above the rest and goes through conference play undefeated or with only 1 loss? Or is the Sun Belt just this gigantic, this gigantic collage of parity where everybody can beat anybody and anybody can beat everybody? I don't know. But when you are as overwhelming a favorite to win a conference as Troy is, I'm going to go ahead and take them. So then we switch to the Power 5 conference champs. And the Power 5 conference champs is interesting because one of them is going to be left out of the college football playoff. Or will 2 of them be left out of the college football playoff? Ooh, interesting. So my Power 5 conference champions, Florida State, Texas, Ohio State, USC, and LSU. I know 2 of those are not widely believed to be the conference champs of those conferences. Michigan is the odds-on favorite to win the Big Ten, and Georgia is the odds-on favorite to win the SEC. There are 2 things that come into play for me. I think Ohio State goes into the game against Michigan at 11-0. A lot of people high on Penn State this year. I get it. Drew Aller, very good quarterback, but hasn't played a whole lot. Very good recruit, I guess I should say. A lot of people high on Penn State. And Penn State has been one of those teams that's been very close at times to beating Ohio State and beat them in, what was that, 2016? And beat them. But I think Ohio State takes on Michigan at 11-0. And I think Michigan might be 11-0 at that point too. And there might be a number one, number two thing going on there, similar to 2007. Ryan Day has to beat Michigan. And Ohio State knows they have to beat Michigan, not only for college football playoff implications, not for Big Ten championship implications, but because of the way the last couple of games have gone in that series. I don't think Ryan Day is at risk of losing his job should he fall to Michigan again. Outside of a worst case scenario, sure, if Ohio State loses to Indiana on Saturday and loses to Wisconsin and Penn State and then loses to Michigan, sure, yes, Ryan Day is on the hot seat. But I don't think that there is a loss to Michigan for a third straight year that dumps Ryan Day out of that job. Gene Smith's about to retire. His parting shot as Ohio State athletic director isn't going to be, I fired Ryan Day because he lost to Michigan 3 times. It's not going to happen. Now, if, again, there's a worst case Ontario, sure, he might get fired if they lose to Michigan and they come into the Michigan game at 7-3. Yes. 7-4. Yes, he could get fired at that point. But Ohio State knows they have to beat Michigan, not just for the conference championship, not just for college football playoff implications, but because of what the rivalry means and what it means for their head coach. So I think Ohio State beats Michigan at the end of the season and then beats Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. So give me the Buckeyes to win the Big Ten. And then in the SEC, I will not be surprised if LSU loses to Florida State this weekend. And then I think they rattle off 11 in a row. Georgia will be 12-0. There's really kind of no I don't really think there's a chance that they're not 12-0 going to Atlanta. But I'll take LSU to beat Georgia in the semifinal. Or not the semifinal. It's the quarterfinal? The quasi quarterfinal. Give me LSU to beat Georgia. So I will take, and I think the other thing at play there is, one, LSU has been, or I guess Brian Kelly coached teams have been somewhat slow starters, and you don't get that luxury when you're playing Florida State to open the season. So that's a tough spot to be in. So don't be surprised if LSU loses to Florida State this weekend. If they beat Florida State 12-0, 11-1, definite possibility. Alabama will be good. They will have a knockdown, drag-out fight with Alabama. I like their chances, frankly. So that's where my head is at, is that LSU has to go to Bryant-Denny. But I still think LSU can beat Alabama at Alabama. And I think LSU beats Georgia and Atlanta because they're going to get better as the season goes along. So I like their chances. So my Power Fives, Florida State, Texas, USC, Ohio State, LSU. The Pac-12 is the Power 5 version of the Sun Belt, where I think USC and Oregon and Washington, any one of those three can win the conference championship. And I think Oregon State can beat any one of those teams. The Pac-12 is going to be somewhat top heavy, that I think Utah could beat a couple of those teams. And they're going to knock each other out of the college football playoff race, where I think the champion of that conference might be 10-2, and it's just not going to be good enough to make the college football playoff. And I think it's a similar situation with Texas, where if Texas can go to Alabama and grab a win, I don't foresee Alabama being 12-0, but I also don't foresee them being 9-3 because they lost to Texas, Ole Miss, A&M, Tennessee, or LSU. I don't see 12-0 in Alabama's future, just because I don't think they believe they've got any great options at quarterback. Now, eventually they're going to figure it out and they'll play well. But is it going to be good enough to beat Texas in 2 weeks? I don't know. I'm hesitant to believe in Texas just because how many times has Texas been back in the last 10 years and then they weren't? I think Texas Tech could be a real player in the Big 12. I think there's a legitimate possibility that Kansas State and Texas Tech both are someone that Texas might need to be wary of. And luckily for Texas, they get them both at home. But those are three schools that I think could round robin each other with losses and again, knock you out of the college football playoff. So when you take a look at the college football playoff, last year, 4 teams. The 2 semifinals are at the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. So I've already mentioned that I believe Ohio State runs the table in the Big Ten, 13-0, with wins over Michigan and Wisconsin in the final game of the season and in the Big Ten championship game. So Ohio State will be number 1 in the college football playoff final rankings. That's my thought. And I think Ohio State takes the Rose Bowl because while it might be farther than the Sugar Bowl, there's a sizable contingent of West Coast Buckeye fans. There's literally a city in Arizona called Buckeye, Arizona. It's a little, the Rose Bowl is somewhat home for Ohio State. So they're going to play in the Rose Bowl. They'll choose the Rose Bowl, and they will play number 4 Georgia, whose only loss will be to LSU in my wild, crazy, wacky decisions of who won conference championships and who's making the playoffs. So 13-0 Ohio State versus 12-1 Georgia in the Rose Bowl in the college football playoff semifinal. And like I said, Georgia, in my estimation, 12-0. They lose to LSU in the conference championship game. LSU will be the number 2 team, and they'll play in the Sugar Bowl, which is about as home cooking as a college football playoff semifinal can get. But Brian Kelly, and I will die on this hill. If Brian Kelly will win a national championship at LSU, it's just a matter of how long. LSU will have a rematch against Florida State in the Sugar Bowl because the Seminoles, I think, are 13-0 as well. I think they beat LSU on Saturday, and if they're not, they go 12-1, and their loss is to the number 2 team in the country at that point, at that stage of the season. They will have lost to the SEC champion, and that's their only loss. So my college football playoff 4, Ohio State, Georgia, LSU, and Florida State. So that's where my college football playoff predictions sit. OSU versus Georgia in the Rose, LSU versus Florida State in the Sugar. I have Georgia and LSU in the national championship game. And I'll take LSU just because, one, I think it's really difficult to three-peat. Really difficult to three-peat. And I don't know that there's simply enough that Kirby Smart can say to motivate his players to think anything other than, well, by God, we're Georgia. We're going to walk off the bus. We're going to kick your ass, and we're going to take our gold trophy and go home for the 3rd straight year. I think that's difficult to do. I think you saw Ohio State push Georgia to the absolute limit a season ago. And I'm not going to rehash any of the excuses or explanations, whatever you want to call them, for why Ohio State didn't beat Georgia. But winning back-to-back was really difficult. Winning back-to-back-to-back when I think there are other programs who are at that same level as you, at least in 2023, becomes insanely difficult. So I'll take Georgia and LSU in the championship game, and I'll take LSU to win the national championship. I know that they are not on the top of the minds of a lot of folks to win the title. They were playing really well at the end of the season last year. Brian Kelly's going to win a title at LSU, and I think he might have the guys to do it. In my New Year's 6 bowl games, I'll throw these in here as well. I think Michigan plays Tennessee in the Orange Bowl. I think Michigan has one loss, and unfortunately for them, their one loss comes at a really bad time. They don't get the opportunity to play in a Big Ten championship game. And when you look at, they don't have that 13th data point. They didn't win their conference. And frankly, I think Georgia's going to get the benefit of the doubt more than Michigan will at the end of the day. If there's, at least until something changes drastically, there will be a, I don't want to say an SEC bias, but Georgia will get the benefit of the doubt. An SEC school will get the benefit of the doubt over a Big Ten school that didn't make their conference champion. So give me Michigan versus Tennessee in the Orange Bowl. I got Penn State versus Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. I think Penn State might go 10-2 with losses to Ohio State and Michigan. And they've gotta deal with the thought of what might have been, what could have been, if we could have got one of them, but they didn't. So Penn State versus Boise State, who represents the Mountain West as a group of 5 in the Fiesta Bowl. And the Peach Bowl, I've got Alabama versus Clemson. I think Clemson is still going to be a formidable opponent in 2023. I think they might play in the ACC championship game. I don't know. But I like Cade Klubnik. I think it's been fun to discuss the downfall of Dabo. And I'm not a Dabo guy. I just don't buy the shtick at all. And I don't want to sit here and rail about Dabo Sweeney for the next 15 minutes or so I'll leave it at that. I'll hold it in. It's hard, but I'll hold it in. Alabama, Clemson in the Peach Bowl, and then Texas versus USC in a Cotton Bowl. You know, you get that big SEC versus Big Ten match. Oh, wait, I'm being told that's not those conferences yet. But I think Texas winning the Big 12 at probably 10-2, and the USC winning the Pac-12 at probably 10-2 opens up a couple of and then you get 3 of the conference champions instead of 4 of the conference champions. So it opens up an at-large. It opens up. It opens up an at-large spot in your New Year's 6. So my New Year's 6 bowls: Michigan versus Tennessee in the Orange Bowl, Penn State versus Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, Alabama versus Clemson in the Peach, and Texas versus USC in the Cotton Bowl. And then my final prediction: the Heisman Trophy. And I've got 4. I don't know why I can't. I got 4 players who are being invited to New York. I think Caleb Williams will get invited to New York unless he just doesn't get anywhere close to the numbers that he put up a season ago. I think Caleb Williams will find himself as a finalist at the Heisman Trophy ceremony again. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. for Ohio State will be at the Heisman Trophy ceremony. And generally, when you get that wide receiver there, the quarterback's there too, because every time that guy catches a pass, runs for some yards and touchdowns, somebody's got to throw it to him. I just wonder if there isn't a Clemson style or Alabama style quarterback battle throughout the season where at some point somebody plays 3 games or 4 games and the other quarterback plays 8 games at Ohio State. And I also think, depending on who that quarterback is, the narrative will be that Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka make him look really good and not the other way around. So I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is in New York. I think Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr. has a very good opportunity. If he can stay healthy, which he struggled to do at Indiana, but had a big year last year. And if Washington can be in that Pac-12 title race, and he can be a Lamar Jackson type candidate where everybody goes, the team's not great, but holy cow, that guy's really good. I think Michael Penix Jr. has a great shot to be in New York. And because I'm high on LSU, I've got Jaden Daniels there. And I've got Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman Trophy. Because you know what? If they're going to beat Georgia in the SEC championship game and they're going to be 12-1 or 13-0, it's because he played really well. So I'll take Jaden Daniels to win the Heisman Trophy. So that's my college football predictions throughout the entire season. I want to hear from you what you think I'm a jackass, what you think I'm right on, because I'm sure there are thoughts on both. I want to know. Hit me up on Twitter at Garrett Seawright. There's 2 R's and 2 T's in Garrett. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment. We'll chat about it in there. I want to know what your thoughts are, your predictions, who you see winning the Heisman Trophy, the national championship, the New Year's Six, college football bowl game, college football playoff. Want to know what you think. So hit me up. Let's have that discussion. That'll do it for today's edition of the Daily Huddle here on Thursday, August 31st. There are some games in action tonight, a couple games on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It is college football Christmas, baby, and I can't wait. Hope you're right there with me. Let's chat on Twitter at Garrett Seawright. Thanks for making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you do so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give the thumbs up. It helps the channel go a long way. And if you're listening on a podcast, drop a 5-star review, and we will listen to them and read them on the air. We'll bleep out the expletives. Thanks. That'll do it for today. We'll catch you on Sunday with a week 1 overreaction. We'll have all sorts of stuff to talk about from the first weekend, college football getting underway for everybody in America. It's going to happen right here on Saturday Glory.